Hey there guys, you're watching Code Lab. I hope you're all doing really well. Welcome to another video in the Advanced CSS series, and in this video we're going to be creating this overlay hover effect over an image. So its initial stage, we're just going to have an image, and then when I hover over the image you'll see an orange overlay appears from the top left corner, as well as some of the text transitioning on the screen. And if you also look closely, you can see the image actually scales up in size. So a pretty cool animated effect and pretty simple to create. So the first thing we're going to do is just go inside the body of this blank document here, and I'm going to create a div with the class of container, and what this is just going to do is just hold our image so we can center it in the middle of the browser using Flexbox. Now the next thing we're going to create inside here is just a div with the class of item, which is just going to be our item which has the image as well as the text. So we're going to create a div called item image, and this is going to have our image, so img, and go inside the image folder, grab the trainer's image, and then underneath this div we're going to create the text, so item text, hit tab, and then we're just going to have a h2 in here saying trainers, and then a paragraph tag which is just going to say limited edition. You guys can write whatever you like here, but I'm just going to write this to stay consistent with our original example, and then we're just going to open this up with live server. So if you look in the browser, you can see there's our image, which is really big at the moment. So first we need to adjust that. But if you scroll down, you can also see the text, so the item text here. So if we go into the head tag here, and I just want to link this style sheet. So link style.css, head inside the style sheet. Now the first thing I want to do is just remove all of the margin and padding. And then I also want to set the box sizing property to border box. And then what I'm going to do is just give that the body tag that color, or the background color of teal, so it's consistent with the example here. And then the next thing I want to do is just make the image a lot smaller. So I'm going to grab the class of item, and then grab the image, and then let's give this a width of, let's say, 550 pixels, and then let's also give this a height of 550 pixels. And then I just want to keep its aspect ratio, so we're going to use the object fit property to cover. So now we'll keep its aspect ratio, and then the next thing I want to do from here is just grab the container class. So we're going to be using Flexbox to center all of this. So we're going to first give it a height of 100 viewport heights, so it's the whole height of the browser, and then display of flex, justify content to the center, and then align items to the center, so it's in the middle of the browser here. So as you can see, it's the exact same as the example. Now from here, what I want to do is grab the div with the class of item, which wraps around the image and the text, and I just want to set position here to relative, because I want to position everything after this absolute inside of the item. And then what I also want to do is just set the overflow property to hidden, and I'll show you guys why I've done that in a moment. So after this, I want to grab the pseudo element of after, so item, and then grab the pseudo element of after, and then just create some content after this item, which is going to be the overlay. So we want to grab the content property, set this to nothing because we don't want it to be anything at the moment. We just want that background color of the overlay. So set display to block, and then a background color to orange, opacity to 0.8, so it's a bit transparent, and then we'll set the position to absolute, say top 0, left 0, bottom 0, and then right 0. And then if you look in the browser now, you can see there's our overlay. Now what I want to do is actually position this overlay to the top left corner here, because we want it to transition from the top left down, so it covers the whole image. So to do that, I'm first going to grab the transform property, and first I want to just scale this up in size, so 2, and then translate on the X and Y. So let's say negative 65% on the X, and negative 65% on the Y. So what's essentially happened now is that the overlay is actually positioned on the X and Y negative 65%, and then to remove it completely, I just want to rotate this 45 degrees, so rotate 45 degrees. So we can now no longer see the overlay, even though it is actually currently in the top left corner. So if we actually want to see the overlay, I'm just going to comment out the overflow of hidden, And now you can see our overlay. So what this essentially does is that anything that's outside of the container, which is a class of items, so the image and the text, we want it to be hidden initially, and then when we apply the hover effect, we want the overlay to slide in. So that's essentially what the overflow of hidden does. So I'm just going to uncomment that so we can no longer see it. And then what we want to do now is just add a transition here so it's nice and smooth. So transition of the transform property, and we'll say 1.2 seconds, and then we'll say ease in, out. And then what we want to do is grab the hover class. So grab the item first, and we want to apply the hover class to the item, because the initial state is just going to be the image. Otherwise, if we tried applying it to the pseudo element, it wouldn't work, because currently right now we can't see the pseudo element. So now we apply it to the pseudo element of after, and then we'll say transform scale 2, and then we'll say translate on the X and Y again. We'll just put 0, 0, and then we'll just keep the rotation of 45 degrees. And what should happen now is there should be a smooth transition of the overlay coming over the image from the top left. And as you can see now, it's working. So if I actually uncomment the overflow hidden again, so we can see what this looks like, you'll see our overlay in the corner there. And if I hover over the image, you'll see the overlay comes across the whole image. And then anything that's outside of the container, you can see that's visible. So if I uncomment this, we'll only be able to see the bit that comes over the item. So the next thing I want to do is just increase the size of our image when we hover over this. So if we look at our original example, you'll see when we hover over this, the image actually scales up in size. So that's what we're going to create here. So it's really simple to create. So we're just going to grab the class of item image, and I'm going to say transform scale. And let's first start at 1, so it's default size, and we'll add a transition in here too. So transition 1 second ease. And then let's apply a hover effect here. So we want to grab the item first and apply the hover effect onto the item, as this is the original state. And then grab the item image, and then say transform. Let's scale this up by, let's say 1.2. So what this will do now is that the overlay will come in from the top left, and the image will increase in size. So it's working as it should. Now the last thing we want to do now is just style the text here. So if we look at the original example, you'll see that the text actually drops in from about -30 pixels. So we'll hover over this, overlay comes in, and the text drops, as well as the image increasing in size. So that's the last bit of this animation. So we're going to go underneath this bit here, grab the class of item, go inside that and grab the item text. And we're going to have quite a bit of styling here, so we're just going to separate it with comments. So first we're going to set the position of this. So we'll set the position to absolute, top 0, left 0, and then we'll set the width of this to be 100%, the height of this to be 100%, and then let's use flexbox to center our content. So we're just going to say flexbox in here, and then display flex, align the items to the center, justify content to the center, and then the flex direction, we want it to stack on top of each other, so we'll set in a column, so that centers our text there. And then let's just apply some general styles here. So general styles, we want the text to align to the center, we want the z index here to have a value of 1. So by default all elements have a value of 0, and we want the text to be on top of the overlay and the image, so we set the index to 1. So we also want the opacity to be 0 because we don't want the text to initially show. And then let's also change the color of the text to white. And then to animate this, we're going to need some transform and transition properties. So I'm just going to put a comment in here, animation, and we'll grab the transform property, and we'll start the translate on the y-axis about -30 pixels, and then we'll set a transition for both the transform and the opacity. So opacity, let's say 0.2 seconds, ease, and then 1 for the transform. So comma, we want this to be about 1 second long, and then ease for the transform, and then let's also add a transition delay of about let's say 0.5 seconds, And then all we need to do now is just apply the hover effect. So we'll grab the item, apply the hover class to the item because that's the initial state, and then grab the item text. So on hover we want this to appear, so we'll set the opacity to 1, and then for the y-axis, or the transform translate on the y-axis, we want this to finish in the center, so we'll set the value to 0. And that should be it for the animation. So if I hover over this, the overlay should come in from the top left, the image should scale up in size, and the text should drop in for about -30 pixels. So as you can see now, it's fully functioning, and the animation is exactly the same as the original. So all we need to do now is just add some style into the text here. So I'm going to go underneath here, grab the item, go inside the item, grab the class of item text, grab the H2, and this will have a font size of about 4 rem. And then the letter spacing, let's give this about 3 pixels. So just add some space between the letters, and add a bit of margin here of about 5 pixels. And then what I'm going to do is just duplicate this, change the H2 to a paragraph. The font size I want to be about 2.5 rem. The margin, let's make the margin a bit bigger to about 10 pixels. Then duplicate this for the button. Grab the button. We'll have the same font size, but we'll remove the letter spacing. The margin, keep the same. Padding, let's add a bit of space between the border and the content, so about 10 pixels. Border radius, let's make it more rounded, so let's say about 30 pixels. Remove the background, so let's make it transparent. And the color of the text to be white, and then the border to also be white. So border solid 2 pixels, and the color white. So that should be the animation completed now. So I'll hover over this, the overlay will come in, the image will increase in size, and the text will now drop from 30 pixels or -30 pixels. And as you can see now, it looks exactly the same as the original. So that'll be it for this video, guys. A pretty cool but simple animation we've created using just CSS. It can really help bring your projects to life and make them more dynamic. Now, if you guys enjoyed the video, please show your support by hitting the like button, and please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.